Good afternoon and welcome to Sibos Today. In this afternoon's program, we meet footballing legend and motivation and leadership expert Kevin Keegan.
Yes, that's coming up first, and we've been looking forward to it all day, or I have.
Especially you, I know.
The red jacket in honour of Liverpool. Also this hour, we've got FinTech, the impact of new technology, and fresh thinking on established banking institutions.
And if you're looking to relax over a drink this evening, stay with us for our exclusive Sibos TV Essential Guide to Geneva's best bars.
So coming up first, I'm so excited. Drum roll, please. Yes, Kevin Keegan is here, one of Europe's football heroes. As a player and manager, he won just about every major trophy possible, and he's now one of the most respected commentators in the sport.
And today he's also a motivational speaker who talks about leadership, performing under pressure, and how to motivate yourself and others to achieve skills that Kevin learned in football and he believes are transferable from sport to business. Welcome, Kevin.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Lovely to have you here. I'm very excited. I know we've got matching outfits, haven't we? So what brings you to Sibos?
Well, I'm here with the Standard Chartered, who, sponsor Liverpool now. Great sponsorship until 2019. And really go on the stand. We're going to give away some... well, we're not going to give away. We're having an auction of 2 tickets for the Manchester United game at Liverpool in 3 weeks' time. We're going to auction a shirt signed by the Liverpool team with it's a special shirt we're going to wear on that match day, which is for charity, and of course mine as well. And it's freedom to believe. It's a reason to believe. It's seeing is believing is our charity. Yeah. So it's to do with people getting proper education and eye tests early enough to save them losing their sight. So we've raised some money, and we've said as a company they'll raise 100 million by 2020, and they're about 85 million and counting. Hopefully today some more.
Are we allowed to bid in the auction as well?
Even as a Queen's Park Rangers fan, which I know you are.
Forgivable this time around.
I think the minimum you've got to bid for the shirt, the Liverpool shirt, signed by all the team. It's a special one-off because the team will only wear this shirt. It won't have Standard Chartered on. It'll have Seeing is Believing. So it'll be an absolute one-off. Yeah. Signed by all the team. That one's probably you can bid on, but mine will go for next to nothing. If you want a cheap shirt, bid on mine.
I'll go for that one.
Yeah.
I'll bid as high as I possibly can.
Yeah, well,
it's for a good cause.
It's for a great cause.
Yeah.
But we want to talk about sport and also how it translates into the real world, because you've led the England football team and 2 Premier League teams. What do you think are the skills and leaders that leaders need to have to win in competitive environments as intense as being in an elite football game?
Yeah, I mean, you can't compare it totally because obviously, there are slight differences, but the line that runs through is the same. A leader's got to bring people along with him and sometimes let them have the freedom to even sometimes make mistakes. And, so I always went from the fact that, we would share responsibility. If it goes wrong, then the leader's got to step back in again and take the brunt of the criticism. But I always try to teach my staff and let them open the debate on if they think I'm doing something wrong, to come in a room, not in front of the players obviously, but in a room and say, look, I think we could do that better or that better. Because I think sometimes when you're at the top, you're trying to watch everything and you miss some key points. So sometimes the guy who's the kit man, for example, a very important job at a football club, but not the same responsibility if the results go wrong, he sometimes comes up with a gem of a thing saying, boss, if we did this or we did that, we'd save this or that in time or energy for the players. So, to really be there as a leader, but don't think you know it all, don't think you're in charge of it all. You need a lot of help.
Now, Kevin, I know as a player and both a manager that the level you were playing at, whether it was in the UK or Germany or wherever else in the world that you were under intense pressure. There was a huge scrutiny on you because you were brilliant at your job. So what can you give? What kind of transferable skills can you give to business leaders under that intense pressure?
I think the thing I learned, I got rejected twice, so
surely not.
Took a normal job. I got rejected by my Doncaster Rovers, the only team I wanted to play for. They turned me down because I was too small. I got rejected at Coventry, and I sort of took a job and then got in the back door. And I think the best piece of advice, obviously, always say to kids, if the father says, train hard, get yourself fit, because that's the thing you can control. There's some things you can't control in life, but the things you can control, try and do them the best you can. I got myself very, very fit, and that I overtook a lot of players with a lot more ability than me just by being able to run a bit longer, last a bit longer, see it out a bit better. And so just one thing like that can make a difference. And the thing that changed my life, I did a 50-mile charity run, and everyone said, "You're mad." I was only 15, and I was mad. But I didn't realise what I was going into. My mate was 40. He was used to doing them. But having done that, it gave me a real string to my bow, and it gave me a fitness level that no matter where I went, Liverpool, Hamburg, everywhere, I always was fitter than most people because I didn't have the natural ability. That helped me a lot. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I think, never think, ever, you can't do something. Don't let people tell you you're not good enough. Don't let people say you're too small and just believe it. You just prove people wrong. And, it's amazing what you can do if you actually put your mind to it. And leaders have to sometimes ride it. You get into situations as a football manager where you think, hold on, I really don't know what to do about this. I've not been to university. I've not been through a college program to learn about how to handle youngsters and older players and young players coming in and staff and fans. So you have to believe you can come through it, and it's amazing. Every time I went somewhere as eventually a big name player, I was able to carry that. In other words, if we went to play in Thailand, they would want your big name player to go to the press conference, your big name player has to go to the photo shoots. You end up doing 10 times as much as everybody else, but somehow that develops you as a person, and you find yourself quite comfortable doing those things. But at first you think, hold on, what do I do here? Because I've never been there. So never doubt yourself is what I'm saying. I made records and everything. People said, "Can you sing?" I said, "Yeah, I could." But I made a record.
He couldn't, by the way. Sorry. I love you, Kevin.
Very much. Hey, it was a smash hit on BBC.
Yeah. I don't think I bought a record.
No, they played it, then they smashed it.
But the challenge for businesses, they may not have as many opportunities to try again, and they can't afford to fail. So they may say, "Well, hang on, I'm not really going to try that. It's a bit too out of my league. I don't have the time to get there to train for it." I mean, whereas you had a bit more time, perhaps.
Yeah, you have time, but when these circumstances come up that are really life-threatening for your company, big issues, you don't have time. You've got to the leader's got to make a decision. Indecision, no decisions is worse than doing. Even if you make a decision, it's not quite the right one. It's better than doing nothing and just letting the ship sink or sail on the wrong route. But I do think that with football as well, we're judged more instantly. In a company, you've probably got 6 months to a year to turn your company around and figures. We've got a match sometimes. You play on a Saturday, you lose. You play on a Tuesday and you lose, and suddenly, the whole world's collapses around you. Your job's under threat. If your job's under threat, all your staff jobs are under threat. So in many ways, football is very, very much more intense. We publish our results every week, because the league table goes in the papers. So, you have a little bit more time to think in most businesses, whereas in football, you're thinking on the job almost, even to the point where the game's 60 minutes old, you're 1-0 down, you look at your bench, what do I do?
And when things do go wrong, how do you motivate people and players or leaders, if you want to broaden it out to business, to actually try and do something about it?
Well, in football, you would get your staff together and talk about it, but in front of the players, the one thing you would never, ever criticise, especially openly, is your players, because they're the ones who've got to go out on the pitch and they've got to perform. So you might have a debate with your staff where you think some of the players aren't doing it right or pulling the weight, or maybe not even caring enough. But you've got to be very, very careful what you actually say to those players, because you never know when you're going to need them. You get an injury. If you say to a guy, "Look, you're never going to play for me again," and then suddenly the physio comes, "By the way, he's ruptured his Achilles, he's out for 6 weeks," you've got to then say to the guy, I said you weren't going to play again. Well, I'm going to play you now. You can't, so you don't burn your bridges. You keep all your options open, because your squad is your squad. And I think that's a good lesson in business as well. Even if you've got someone not pulling the weight, try to tell them why. Don't just shun them or think I'm going to get rid of them. Give them the chance to come round and contribute. And you find that those people who turn become better than the ones you've already got, because they've been at the bottom end of it, and they realise, wow, this is much better. And they've got an energy that sometimes the normal routine guys and girls who do a good job don't have, and they go beyond them. A little bit like, with football, a lot of guys, like I said, rejected. We tend to, if we use it as a proper spur, we don't only get back to the level that we rejected at, we go beyond it, because we've got a little bit more fire in our belly, a little bit more determination. And I think in business, sometimes people are discarded too quickly. They'd say, oh, in the commentating world that we're in, they say he's not very good. I can remember a guy called Bob Wilson started. He was a goalkeeper. Yeah. Wasn't a very good commentator.
He wasn't, was he?
No, very wooden. But 2 years later, you think, wow.
He's a lovely human being, though, isn't he?
Yeah, he's pretty good at his job now as well. Yeah. So he got better and better. So you've always got to see the good in people. Even it's difficult sometimes with the players because they're awkward. But you have to.
What a lovely philosophy in life, isn't it? Yeah.
Maybe also as a personality, you've been in the spotlight a lot when in the younger days playing the game, and a bad game, it'd be even more in the spotlight. How would you share some of that in terms of CEOs when something goes wrong with the company? They're put in front there, having to deal with the situation. How do you deal with that pressure? What are some of the considerations?
Well, you've got to try and deal with success and failure in the same way, and it's difficult because there's no doubt about it. It's much easier to deal with success. I mean, in football, for example, you can play a game, let's say away at Queen's Park Rangers, one of the top clubs in the world, your team, and you could play really well and lose. And then you could play at home against one of the best teams, play really poorly and win. And in business, you don't think it could be like that. You think if we're having a bad time, or we're not doing very well, the figures aren't right, you think we're losing, but you could just round the corner from a win. And once you win that game, even if you play badly at football, the confidence comes, and you might go on a run of 6 or 7 games where you just think, what happened? Why are they so much better now? Why are we as a team so much better now than we were 5 weeks ago, because we were playing well? And sometimes it's just confidence. It's just that little bit of belief that people need. And I think my main job as a manager was to try and tell players that they could be better than they were. They could work harder than they worked. They could achieve more than they've achieved at the moment, and give them another step up. And don't just settle for mediocrity, because a lot of people do. In football clubs, I'm sure in businesses, you know where guys want to get off and girls want to get off. Some of the footballers I played with didn't want to be where I was, because they saw me being whisked off to a press conference. They saw me they were going out for a night out, and I was going to talk to some fans, and they thought, I don't really want that. I'm doing all right here. I'm getting good money. I'm not having this pressure, and I'm not down there. So they find, if you know what I mean, they find the level. And you need some of those in a team. Football team, we have 4 or 5 leaders, and that's it.
And Kevin, just a reminder about the charity again for those that have just tuned into the programme.
It's Seeing is Believing. We've got on the stand, we've got 2 tickets for the Liverpool-Manchester United game on the 17th of next month. Yep. New stand at Liverpool. Always a great game. Big rivalry, as you know. We've got a shirt. Seeing is Believing is going to be what they're going to be playing with, not standard charter, one-off. So to get this shirt, I think the minimum bid is $500, I'm thinking. So that would be a wonderful acquisition for someone. And then there's my shirt, which is like the 3rd prize.
For €10.
You can for about 10, 12 euros.
No, I'd pay a lot more for that.
But yeah, 12 euros probably. That's what we're here for. And we're hoping to raise, as I say, we're targeting 100 million by 2019-20. Okay.
Kevin, it's a lifelong dream to meet you. My dream, you certainly were fabulous today, so thank you very much for coming along. I can't be any more gushing, can I?
No.
So thank you.
Can I just say, I hope QPR win the league next year?
Yeah, I love you even more. There you go, Kevin. Can you just leave, Stephen? We'll do a show together.
I've been very quiet throughout. That's all right.
You never said what your team was.
No. Thank you so
I'll
much.
stay out of it. Yeah. Okay, well, we have to do a quick look ahead to the evening ahead, because Geneva is a great place for socializing, and we managed to persuade Nadine to turn intrepid reporter again to visit some of those sights and sounds around the town to find out what's happening in the city's nightlife. Take a look.
After a long day at the conference, you'll be looking to unwind. If you're heading out to the bars, we've found a few you won't want to miss. Sophisticated with panoramic views of the mountains, the Glow Bar at the President Wilson Hotel is ideal at any time of the day. For coffee, a relaxing lunch, or sipping a signature cocktail. The hotel also hosts Michelin star chef Michel Roth, with 3 restaurants to choose from that offer gourmet cuisine and tasting experiences from right across the world. Set on an island on the River Rhône in Geneva's Old Market Hall is the home of the Brasserie des Halles de Lille. The perfect place to meet friends and colleagues for a relaxed evening.
We're in the center of Geneva. We're right at Bel Air. I think it's a great place to meet all different types of people. We have local Geneva coming here. We have international Geneva coming here, like you see tonight as well, with the United Nations, with beautiful scenery at night. So you can see all the, banking district. So it's a fun place to meet people and just to, enjoy your time here.
And if you're wanting the ultimate rooftop view, the 5 Lounger Bar at the Metropole Hotel boasts one of the best in Geneva, overlooking the lake. The stylish and relaxed ambience makes this the perfect place to spend your evening.
Nadine, I saw you in a lovely dress, having a little bit of a cocktail, having a good time.
A good time. See, I can dress smartly.
Oh, you are dressed very smartly, especially since Kevin just came by. So, okay. Well, it's time to turn our attention to our expert panel to discuss the lessons being learned from FinTech, a tidal wave of innovation and new thinking, influential, no doubt, and often providing ideas that are widely adopted.
Some of these new products come from small companies with little infrastructure. Can they really be capable, though, of handling services traditionally provided exclusively by big banks?
Well, joining us on Sibos TV are Warren Mead, who is a partner with KPMG, their global head of FinTech, and Christophe, Chazot's group head of innovation at HSBC. Gentlemen, welcome.
Well, welcome to you. First of all, could you summarize how do your organizations actually view the rise of FinTech? And if I could start with you, Warren.
Well, I think if you went back 2 years, everyone was worried about FinTech. They saw it as a disruptor, a threat to the incumbent banks. But over the last couple of years, that view's really changed to actually accepting them as part of the wider ecosystem and wanting to work with them and engage with them to sort of create a better financial services for everyone.
And how about for you?
In every industry, at some point, the incumbents are slowing down their efforts. And in the case of banking, it's really due to the financial crisis. And in these industries, and space industry is a good example, new actors can really bring something completely different. For example, SpaceX and Blue Origin brought the fact that the rocket can land back, and so it will save about 30% of fuel. It's the same in the financial industry. And our goal is really to bring a better experience to the customer and really to use this new technology so that he is better off. At HSBC, it's really about making things faster, better, simpler. It's about connecting our customer to more opportunities, and it's also about doing it safely. And so these companies, these young companies, tackling problems which maybe we found unsolvable, are attacking these problems, and we can really use their energy, their skills, their new approach to really deliver a better customer opportunity for the customer.
But Christophe, how much of this is being driven by the industry itself, by banks themselves, or by the customer? Who's wanting it more?
It's really, most of these efforts, if you look historically at the trend from really the real breakup in terms of customer experience came in 2008 with the mobile data and with the smartphone. At that stage, you see an explosion of the number of services in every single industry to leverage on these two things. And in the banking industry, it's the same. The customer has seen that in the hostel industry, in the transport industry, in other industries, things have gone very fast, and they don't see it happening in the banking industry. And so there is a void which has been filled progressively with new entrants that have delivered new customer experience. And progressively, starting 2013, 2014, banks have really put a lot of effort in order to catch up and to be able to leverage on these new tools so that the customer is better.
So how does this actually work, Warren, at KPMG?
Well, we're an advisory firm, so we work with many of the world's biggest banks, helping them to partner with fintechs. And we also help the fintechs to partner with banks, because there is a huge cultural difference between the two. Often the fintechs are 30, 40, 50 people, owner managed, got entrepreneurs who get incredibly frustrated by the big giants who, wrap them up in months and months of bureaucracy. But on the flip side, the big incumbents, they have risk management processes, they have things that they have to do because they do operate in a regulated environment, and we help the fintechs understand that. So you can think of us as a kind of marriage broker between the two.
Sounds lovely. And Christophe, does HSBC, say, have its own incubator units? How does it work for you?
We don't have incubator units in terms of the traditional incubator. But what we do is we work with a number of partners to nurture and mentor a number of young companies. And when we identify potential candidates that will help us solve a problem, we bring them on board. People like FinTech, for example, which we've rolled out in 23 countries, and which we have detected in one of these accelerators. But then we also partner with some of these companies, or we take a stake in these companies. So we usually take minority stakes, 5 to 10%. And the goal is really to create a very tight relation with these companies so that we can really progress together and deliver, achieve our goals.
Yeah.
Well, Warren, I was going to ask you about that because you mentioned earlier how that can be difficult sometimes trying to work together. So, as Christophe mentioned, buying a stake in the company, in fact, some are thinking buying the startup entirely. Is that the way moving forward to sort of keep the innovation just to themselves?
There's a bunch of different strategies that are going to work in different scenarios, and sometimes buying a startup is the right thing to do if the startup's running out of money, or if they have a solution that's critical for you. But that's not the only strategy, and if you do it, you have to be really careful that you don't kill what you're buying, right? Because you want people who are entrepreneurial, can move quickly, can think outside of the box. And if you buy them and apply all of the big bank straitjacket to that, you are at risk of killing what you're buying.
And Christophe?
Listen, innovation is very complex, and every structure, every bank, every industry is doing it a bit differently. But there are some very common themes. Acquiring company, taking stake is a very common theme. And you need to do it correctly so that, as Warren said, you don't destroy the assets, especially in an environment where we're highly regulated. There are some constraints which we could impose on some of these startups, which maybe would not kill the business model, but would slow down at least their development. So we need to be careful how we do it.
So I know you mentioned about KPMG being a lovely marriage broker. What's your assessment of those that have joined forces, a fintech coming together with a bank? Is it a marriage made in heaven, or are you finding clash of cultures? So the divorce court. So I'm using your language now, I'm loving it.
Well, I would say they're newlyweds. If you think about the technology journey that banking's on, I think we're only 10% of the way through that. So there's a lot of learning going on as we're doing it. There's a lot of mistakes being made, but also a lot of really great innovation. The big challenge for me, though, is that a lot of this innovation is at the periphery of banking. Okay, it's on the edges, and we haven't really penetrated the core of banking yet and made that really different for customers.
So what's your experience in this then?
I think we need to, when you look at what's happening, you need to differentiate, and we've not talked about that, but it's very important, what's happening in developed market and what's happening to less developed market. In developed market, we see a process which is evolutionary. These companies bring progress, evolution to the current system. But you don't need to reinvent the current system. It works at the end of the day pretty well. Swift is sending 25 million transactions a month, and very few are lost. So in developed market, the banking infrastructure is there, and you can rely on it, and you have an evolutionary process. In less developed markets, or in markets where there is no such a banking infrastructure, at least this banking infrastructure is not sufficiently developed to allow for the hyper-growth of some of these markets, for example, China. Then you need to reinvent something completely different. And that's what Alibaba or Tencent have done. So they have used these new technologies in order to completely reinvent some processes of the banking industry. And that's extremely fascinating. I must say, when you look at what's happening in China, you you can't help thinking that really the innovation in digital financial systems is there. That's where it's happening. Because the US, at the end of the day, is slowed down by the fact that they still have a great banking backbone, and that works well, and you don't need to reinvent it.
It almost sounds like if it doesn't work so well, there's more motivation to look elsewhere and to try different things. You know, I mean, Warren, what do you think? How will these startups be able to provide that, that extra edge to the industry to bring them to that next stage?
Well, they're doing two things. They're bringing innovation of their own in their own right, but they're also challenging the incumbents. They're also challenging them to raise their own game and to look at their own businesses and create more innovation within their own businesses. So there's no doubt that they are good for banking. A cautionary note, there is some areas which are a bit like the Wild West. You've seen peer-to-peer platforms in China which are going bust. There's a huge protest there today. We do have to be a little bit cautious, but on the whole, they're bringing great things to the industry.
And have any of you got any examples where you've seen best practice, large organisations embracing new technology and it working well, from your point of view, from KPMG's?
You can see pockets of it, but I wouldn't say that the banking industry has cracked that yet. I think we've got a long way to go.
Have you got a long way to go?
It's a process that we have initiated really progressively from 2012. We have hired a large number of digital specialists to help us to take this journey. When you look at when you look at the results, in fact, you see that in most developed countries, the incumbents have catched up with the younger players or the smaller players. It took them some time, but the means that they put is so important that they have really catch up in terms of customer experience. What's going to be interesting is what is the next wave of these technologies like AI or data, or how we are going to face the cybersecurity threats, how we are going to tackle with Internet of Things and incorporate it into trade finance. So there is a whole bunch of new things which are coming. It's going to be fascinating.
And that is a challenge because they're all new. It means it's a bigger risk. And Warren, you'll be moderating a session tomorrow titled Learning from FinTech, Can We Fail Fast and Learn Fast? So how ready is the industry willing to fail in that sense?
Well, banking generally has a real fear of failure. And one of the things that I think they can learn is how do you fail in a controlled way, and how do you accept that failure is an important part of the learning process. And that's one thing that FinTech's got really right. I would say, though, the session is about how you learn from FinTech, but I also want to make sure that it's not a one-sided story, because there's a lot that the FinTechs could learn from the banks as well. So it really is about making that marriage a partnership in heaven, like you said, rather than ending in the divorce court.
Well, it's all that years of experience that the banks bring. With the FinTechs, it's that sort of nimble and agile with experience and maturity. So hopefully, as long as you've got the cultures right, the cultures blend well together, then that should be a very exciting future, shouldn't it, for FinTech and marriages. And how have the cultures worked for you, very briefly, and on any of the sort of mergers that you've done with FinTech companies or acquisitions?
No, it works extremely well. For example, in our investment, each time we make an investment, we made investment into Kiriba or TradeShift, we immediately see a lot of projects being done together, and we learn to each other. So immediately the company is much more tied to HSBC, and we learn a lot from them, and then through partnerships we progress a lot, and the result so far is extremely encouraging. So it is a new way for banks to work because they have not been used to create corporate venture capital structures, but it seems like something which is very important and which works well, at least for us.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming in and sharing with us. And just to tell folks that Warren's session will be on Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. It's titled Learning from FinTech, Can We Fail Fast and Learn Fast? But on that note, I think that's it for today.
It is indeed. It's gone by very quickly, hasn't it? Yes, enjoy the rest of your day. Steve and I will be back tomorrow morning for breakfast with Sibos at 8:30 a.m. Remember to wake me up by phone call.
Okay.
Yeah, indeed.
But do please stay with us here on Sibos TV right now for Leaders' Perspectives on Diversity and Inclusion. That is coming up straight after this program. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.